Good morning everyone, I'm that dude over there, and if it weren't obvious from previous videos, I love Fire Emblem. If it weren't for the success of Awakening, I wouldn't have ventured down the rabbit hole and seen all the fun stories and played all the cruel games that make up the Fire Emblem series. So after completing Thracia and playing most if not all the Fire Emblem games, I thought I'd give my thoughts on the top 10 Fire Emblem games. This list is obviously my own opinion, and if you think a certain game should have made the list, let me know in the comments below. Oh, and just for clarification, when I mean I've played all the games, I mean I've witnessed all the stories told across the series. I haven't played Fire Emblem 1, but I have played Shadow Dragon. I haven't played Gaiden, but I have played Valentia, so on and so forth. And now truly, before we begin to get into the list, let's quickly go over some honorable mentions. Fire Emblem Warriors. Warriors was actually the first attempt before Three Hopes of FE entering the hack and slash genre. The plot is bare bones as you follow the Banana Lords Rowan and Leanna as they save their home of Atolis from the evil dragon Velazark. While I don't think the game is that great, I do think that the game deserves to be remembered for laying the groundwork of the do's and don'ts moving forward. Also, Rowan and Leanna for Faye Wen IS. Fire Emblem, Genealogy of the Holy War. This game probably would be my 11th spot if I had it. The story follows Sigurd and his lineage as an evil snake cult runs rampant in their homes. The biggest drawback to the game is the gigantic maps and not having any holy weapons to fight other holy weapon users. That being said, the big maps add to the scope and scale to the game, and it really lives up to the title of The Holy War. Here's to a good remake. Fire Emblem Engage. Engage is the most recent Fire Emblem game that is an anniversary title to honor all the Fire Emblem games that you can no longer play legally. The gameplay is super fresh, and I love how the game punishes you for trying to solo the game with the break mechanic. I intentionally wanted to beat the game without using the emblems, but I found that the game practically forces you to use them. So yeah, that's great. Doing otherwise would hurt your army in the long run, which I think is great. However, because it's an anniversary title, the story isn't that great. Alear as a concept character sounds really interesting with an FE Lord that isn't, a traditional FE Lord. Unlike Ike. I mean, the scene where he wanted to run at the beginning got quite the chuckle out of me, but helped me put myself into the shoes of Alear. But the divine dragon worshipping of Alear reminded me way too much of Corrin in a bad way. A lot of the characters failed to make an impression on me, whether it was their more interesting designs, or characters that made me audibly yawn at best, or groan at worst at their terrible gimmicks. But purely on a gameplay level, I respect all the effort that went into the game. Fire Emblem, Tokyo Mirage Session. To round out the honorable mentions, we have a crossover of Shin Megami Tensei and Fire Emblem. Something that sounds good in theory, but created something that didn't resemble either game. I still need to check out Shin Megami Tensei to get a better view on that end, so I'll use my knowledge of Persona to compensate for the sake of comparisons. TMS follows Itsuki and Tsubasa as they enter the idol industry fighting shadows in the idolosphere. I know they're not called shadows, but they function like shadows. The game uses SMT elements with the baddies themselves being Fire Emblem characters, from Shadow Dragon, Awakening, and Fates. It's been a while since I last played it, but I don't remember it too well, but still had a better story than Fates, so I threw it onto the honorable mentions. Now with that all out of the way, let's begin with number 10. Fire Emblem, The Sacred Stones. Sacred Stones is easily the easiest Fire Emblem game that doesn't feature casual mode. The plot is basic, with Erika and Ephraim wanting to stop the nation of Grotto from reawakening the Demon King for Mortis. But what I like about Sacred Stones is how Erika and Ephraim interact with Lion. Lion is the former friend and now husk for the Demon King. On Ephraim's route, Lion is a cold, heartless monster, and it's up to Ephraim to put an end to him. But on Erika's route, Erika sees Lion's lingering humanity and wants to find a way to save Lion from the Demon King. Erika's route feels more tragic than Ephraim's route, just because you learn more about Lion and his descent to save his father through the power of the Sacred Stone. The game has some pretty dark implications, like Walter wanting to imprison Erika for deeds done in the dark. And then there's Monica. No clarification for that last one.
Just Monica.
Not only that, but Formortis is one of the few final bosses that isn't a dragon, or dragon adjacent. So for that, I thought I made the list. Number 9. Fire Emblem. The Binding Blade. Binding Blade follows the story of young Lord Roy of Foray as he stops the Tyrant King Zephiel of Byrne. I love the character designs in this game, like Elfin, Fae, even characters like Uyghur and Rutger look so cool. I think these characters show so much personality in their sprite art. I even love the story behind Zephiel and the true final boss, Idun. Zephiel hating humanity and wanting to wipe it out to start anew, and Idu having her soul destroyed in order to continue a losing warfront against humans. I especially love the ending where she lives, since it shows her recovering with Fae in the Nabata Desert in Arcadia. But that being said, Roy sucks. He stays footlocked the entire game, and when he finally promotes, there's only like 3 chapters left. The avoid on thrones and gates makes for a worthy challenge, but makes landing an actual blow ridiculous. Thieves can't promote, so Astolfo, Chad, and Kath just become door keys who can fight. And to top it all off, in order to get the good ending, you have to access all the Gaiden chapters, some of which having dumb unlocks like arriving in a fog of war desert map within 25 turns, with the world's worst dark mage alive, or clearing chapter 16 with General Douglas alive. You know, an enemy general that you can't recruit and chases you around the map. While these problems seem small, they really annoy me, so they fall a little bit lower. Number 8. Fire Emblem, the Blazing Sword. The prequel to Binding Blade, Blazing Sword, or just Fire Emblem in the West, is a tale about Eliwood and Hector as they go against the sinister group known as the Black Fang. I respect this game a lot. Eliwood and Ninian's relationship is cute, and Hector's relationship with his brother is tragic. Nurgle's mental downfall as he starts as a father wanting to be with his children, only to become a maniac who wants to use people's life force to become god of the new world, is incredibly sad. Plus, the extra lore of FE6 with chapter 26 was really cool. Seeing young Zephiel before becoming a potential dictator with his sister was really cute. But Blazing Sword was always alright to me. I didn't go crazy over it or anything. It was just an alright game. Despite Lyn being the character Intelligent Systems wants to push from Blazing Sword, the story is about Eliwood and Hector. And it sucks because Eliwood and Hector get sidelined by Lyn, who has her hero's journey in the first 10 chapters. Lyn exists as a third protagonist for the rest of the story, but serves a role more akin to Inez or La Rachel from Sacred Stones, or the Khans in Awakening. Important, but not the main focus. I still think it's better than the games I mentioned before, but not by a lot. Number 7. Fire Emblem, Shadows of Valentia. Echoes is a remake of Fire Emblem Gaiden that follows Alm as he goes up against King Rudolph and the forces of Rigel, and Celica as she investigates the attacks on Millis Temple. This game has a wild departure from the other FE games by having one item equipped instead of an inventory of 5 or 6. It's also the first game to introduce a world map, a route split, and third tier promotions. Alm's story parallels the message Naruto pushes about hard work overcoming all challenges. Except, instead of talent, it's the upper class, leading him to reunite with Celica and learn on the people's reliance on the gods and needing to put them to rest. While I may not have played the original, I greatly enjoyed the updated rendition. I love the introduction of skills and being the first fully voice-acted game to add to the experience. I even enjoyed the dungeon crawling aspects, letting you adventure through the world that's been created. But with that being said, I do have a few critiques about the game. For one, I feel like Celica's route was like a B-plot to an episode. Alm's always felt great to progress through, but Celica's always felt annoying. It's important so you can't skip it, but it's not fun. But on the flip side, the characters on Celica's route are awesome. I love Valbar's crew, and Bowie, May, and Saber make great companions to Celica. However, Alm in the Deliverance fails to reach the heights of Celica's band. The only interaction that feels meaningful is during the side quest with Alm, Luthier, and Clive, where Alm has to teach Clive that all lives are important as he grows into a respectable commander. It's so weird. Not only that, but Maps in Echoes kinda suck. They're not fun, and the challenge comes from fighting the map more than fighting the enemy. But Valentia is good. I really like it. Number 6. Fire Emblem Awakening. Like a good number of the Fire Emblem fans, I was introduced to Fire Emblem properly with Awakening. Awakening follows Chrom as he recruits a mystery tactician and saves the future from the fell dragon Grima. Like with Lyn, Lucina is the face of Awakening, but unlike Lyn, this is Lucina's story too. Despite Chrom being the person you follow for most of the story, Lucina and the tactician Robin take the most spotlight when it comes to Awakening. I like Awakening's story, but I do have to admit, having 3 different stories in the game is a huge problem. I feel like you could cut the Valm arc out and the story could have played mostly the same. Also, having everyone survive at the end is kinda dumb. Like, Mad King Gangrel, the man who forced Chrom's sister to commit suicide in the name of peace, survives dying and joins the fight in the final chapter. Oh, and Emerin survives skydiving without a parachute and joins the army, making her sacrifice absolutely worthless. Walhart, the tyrant who reflects a version of Chrom if he's stuck to dealing with things through violence, survives and joins the fight. Hell, Aversa, the woman who helped reawaken Grima, the final boss in the game, who destroys Lucina's future, survives and joins you in the fight against her god. What the fuck is this shit? Dragon Ball? But despite these grievances, I like the story for what it is. I love the customization of Robin and the second generation of child super soldiers you can create. I love the final choice at the end, with Robin choosing to either sacrifice himself for the future, or have Chrom slay Grima in order to keep Robin alive. And most of all, Awakening got me to check out the rest of the franchise, so to rank it any lower would be a disservice to Awakening. And now we enter the top 5. These games have a great story, and to me are really fun to play. While these games could switch depending on how I'm feeling, I think these are the FE games that you should play at least once if you're interested in the series. So let's dive into number 5. Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn. Radiant Dawn is the sequel to Path of Radiance and expands on the world that was set up. We get introduced to a 4-part story with a full-out war that breaks out across the land of Tellius. Story-wise, I see what they were trying to do and love it. Having the former protagonist you play as be an enemy you have to go against raises the stakes for Micaiah's party. It's worse when said protagonist also wields legendary weapon Ragnall and becomes basically unstoppable. It's a level of storytelling that enters into the gameplay that I just love. Radiant Dawn does have its sets of flaws though, one of which being the Dawn Brigade. They're just bad. Soth is great as a Yagan, but being forced to drag him into the endgame sucks, when there are more qualified units to have that just sit on the bench. Maps take forever to finish, for different reasons than genealogy. But at the end of the day, the flaws get drowned out by all the quality that comes from Tellius. At least, that's my opinion. Number 4. Fire Emblem Three Houses. Three Houses takes what Fates tried to do and actually succeed. By focusing on the House Lords and the Church as the protagonist, it allows the story to develop better than focusing it on solely Byleth. While Edelgard got screwed over by having the shortest route, despite her being the face of the game, and Claude getting screwed over by having a repeated storyline of Silver Snow, each house leader's route are a thrill to explore. Dimitri's fall into insanity only to be brought back by the support of Byleth and the Blue Lions. It's not only tragic, but sweet. Claude's determination to rebuild Fodlan by ending racism, while silly in concept, shows Claude's determination and resolve to unite the world. And for as much as I dislike Edelgard, she is so well written that you can understand why she goes to the extremes she does in the story. I think it speaks to the testament of the game that I can hate Edelgard, but still respect her as a character. Sure, I understand the monastery segments can drag, and that's coming from someone who's played Persona 4 3 times in a row to try and experience the golden route. But I like running through the monastery and recruiting all the students. Post time skip though, I definitely think the monastery should have been axed. It just doesn't make sense that these grown-ass people are still taking orders from their professor, who had a less experience in the war than say Sedith or the main house lord. The amount of love that went into making 3 houses is truly honorable and respectable, and I wish to hit a level of storytelling like that one day. Number 3. Fire Emblem, Thracia 7076. This could be recency bias, or be because of the reputation of Thracia preceding itself, but Thracia is actually good? Question mark? The story of Leaf rising up to reclaim his home is interesting, as he grows into a leader after falling for the same mistakes that he's made before. The game is fun despite its ridiculous mechanics, and using cheese strategies like building super soldiers with Crusader scrolls doesn't necessarily guarantee victory. The final map is a true puzzle to work around and reminds me of other JRPGs with difficult boss fights. While I may not visit it often because of its dumbass mechanics, I don't regret playing it, and I think it's a game worth playing at least once, if only for the memes. Number 2. Fire Emblem, 3 Hopes. Now you may wonder why I gave the second place spot to a side game that plays differently to the other Fire Emblem titles. Well, for me, the reason why this ranks so high is because it achieves something that I believe is nearly impossible to do. Create a game with a story that rivals the original while completely changing the events of the original. The introduction of Shez and Arvel are handled so well, and how the story shifts because of them allows the characters to show different sides to them. The biggest example I can think of is Claude. In 3 Houses, he's all about searching for the truth, in an altruistic scheming sense. But in 3 Hopes, we see a darker side of Claude, as he's willing to use lives for the sake of a win. Or what about Edelgard? Edelgard separates herself from those who slither, and in her conquest to rid the church, she ends up destroying both of them. 3 Hopes actually made me like Edelgard, which is something I never thought I would say after playing 3 Houses. And while Dimitri's story I thought was weaker compared to the Blue Lions route, his Azure Moon routes still have moments that outshine the Blue Lions. Even Byleth, who I thought was going to only be around for the beginning, actually becomes a threat. I like Shez and Byleth's rivalry, and how Shez develops because of them. I love how after Shez defeats Geralt, Byleth is willing to throw himself away to Sothis to get revenge. I think the support between Shez and Byleth is incredible, and I attribute this a lot to Shez. I think Shez is the perfect Avatar character. They have their own personality, their own wants and desires, despite having your name. Shez feels like they slide into the world of Fodlan like a glove. The only thing holding this back from being in the top spot is that it's not a traditional Fire Emblem game. Sure, it's fun as hell, and they fixed a lot of problems of 3 Houses, but when I play Fire Emblem, it's not for the hack and slash. I play Fire Emblem for the strategy and support. While I may suck at coming up with plans on my own, it's still fun to watch a good strategy pop off. I just don't get that same feeling when I'm playing 3 Hopes or the Warriors titles. And that's fine. And finally, number 1. Fire Emblem, Path of Radiance. The first game of the Tellia saga is what I consider the best Fire Emblem game. The plot is full of twists and turns that a new player wouldn't expect. The game is so fun to play, with varying objectives and interesting maps. Ike as a character grows so much throughout the story, and just like Fodlan, Tellius is so developed as a world. The dynamics between the Laguz and Beork, and how they play differently in the story and in-game, are so freaking interesting. I love how you have allies who start out prejudiced and learn to overcome these views through the adventure. Biggest case being Soren and Jill. Learning of Soren's story makes his connections to Ike and his family stronger. Then Jill, this cruel bigot, learns to respect and fight for the Laguz, just like anyone else. I know this game gets a sequel, and while the sequel is fine, it just doesn't compare to Path of Radiance's storyline. But jumping into gameplay, Ike promotes early enough to make him useful throughout the game. No unit feels bad to use, with the exception of like 2 or 3 units. The maps are fun with gimmicks that keep the game interesting. I will never forget Chapter 17, where the map is broken into 4 different maps. Half of the 17 maps you have to protect Leanne from Oliver, and it feels like a true struggle. This game, in my opinion, is Fire Emblem's magnum opus, And that's my list. Am I wrong about the placements? Did an entry not make it onto the list that should have been? Is Tellius overrated and you want to express your wrong opinion? Well, you know what to do in the comments. And while you're down there, leave a like and subscribe, as it helps idiots like me who suck at promoting videos. But until next time, stay safe out there.